London is familiar with having bikes on its roads, but the 6,000 hire bikes now available to the public will undoubtedly change the way that Londoners travel. London's cycle hire scheme has only been running for a week, but the bikes are already a familiar sight in the capital. So far, more than 12,000 people have signed up to the scheme that unlocks bikes across 400 docking stations. Here in Kensington Gardens, they're flying off the racks, and they're being taken for a ride by some very happy customers.
Convenience, no responsibility, it's not your bike, you don't have to worry. Ideal.
I mean, it's a brilliant scheme. You just hop on it, drive it, or cycle it for 20 minutes or so, put it into another docking station. It opens up all parts of London that you wouldn't otherwise see. It's a fantastic system. I really think this is going to capture London's, sort of imagination. I think more and more people will start cycling.
The only problem I can see is that maybe there won't be bikes at certain docking stations, and as long as there's lots of them everywhere and you can easily access them, I think at the moment I just think it's great. I don't think anything needs to be done particularly.
But not all users have had such success with the bikes. Dawn Foster blogs about cycling and was one of the first people to try out the scheme.
I took them for a test run on the first day of the scheme, which was on a Friday. All of them worked very well. Tried out a couple of them. I had friends of different heights and different abilities try them out. They really enjoyed them. And the problems only really started a few days afterwards when people were struggling to get them out of docks. I went to a couple of cycle docks, struggled to get bikes out. When I eventually got a bike out, tried to return it, the dock wouldn't accept it. And a few days after that, when I checked my activity online to see if I'd been charged for any of the bike use, it claimed that I'd gotten a bike out at 1 a.m. at King's Cross, despite being asleep in Battersea at the time. And later that day, it claimed I'd taken 5 bikes out from central London. All I've heard so far is people just constantly having problems, people being unable to register, people's cards being charged several times. TfL claimed that you'll be able to walk up to a dock with your credit card, and anybody can use them by the end of the month. I think they're really going to struggle.
Despite these initial teething problems, sustainable transport campaigners Sustrans are excited about the scheme.
The new cycle hire scheme is very good for London. It's going to be absolutely transformational, I think, in how people travel around the city. It's a relatively small start. Paris has 20,000 bikes already. It's a much smaller city, and London only has 6,000 bikes, but it's a big step forward for cycling in London.
They believe that the key to the success of the scheme lies in its expansion.
It's going to be some time before it appears in outer London. The hire schemes are successful when they're very, very densely packed. Docking stations are very close together, there's plenty of bikes, and people know that when they get to their destination there's going to be a docking station nearby. And the number of trips that are possible by bike further out of London, there's less people around. I think it's going to be some time before it's really effective in outer London. But certainly at the moment it's only Zone 1, Tube Zone 1. And we'd like to see it expand a little bit further out than that, Zone 2. And as I say, east of the Olympic Park is the key one, so that people coming to the Olympic Games can use them to get to and from the park.
Sustrans feel that London has long needed this scheme, a view shared by David Kano, a cycle tour guide and expert on cycling in London.
There hasn't really been a huge presence of cycle hire companies around London. They haven't really kind of made themselves known, and just from my experience working here, we do get a lot of kind of tourists, a lot of people also who live here, who constantly ask if there are cycle hire schemes, and they're really few and far between. So I think the fact that this has been done on such a wide scale in central London is beneficial, can only be really a positive thing.
However, he has concerns over the safety implications of having an extra 6,000 bikes on the road.
My concern is that people who aren't very experienced cycling around London will be more kind of prepared to use them and put themselves in a situation that might be a little bit dangerous. I have seen a couple of people cycling around Hyde Park Corner on these hire bikes and really just not really knowing what they're doing. If you twin that with maybe a little bit of kind of advice on how to cycle around London, because it's not easy. Cycling through the parks is one thing, but when you're cycling through the city on roads with traffic, it can be quite difficult.
But the London Cycling Campaign feel that the more bikes there are on the road, the safer it will be for everyone.
The curious thing about cycle safety is called a safety in numbers principle, and that works by the more bikes you have out on the streets, it actually becomes safer. Now, it sounds a bit unintuitive. You think, what I'm saying is the rate of collisions goes down. People, drivers, taxi drivers, bus drivers, they become more used to seeing cycles around. And you can see that yourself when you go out. You notice the hire bikes around. There are more bikes on the street, and people are inclined to notice them. And it just reduces the rate of collisions. It's a good thing. I guess there is a kind of perception that, if you put inexperienced people out there and tourists perhaps who aren't familiar, that this is going to be a bad thing. But like I say, people react. Like I say, other road users, they're not just machines. People realise this, and people see tourists, and it's up to them to make an extra effort and realise that the city is changed slightly. In the last few weeks, the London transport system has made a subtle shift, and it's up to other road users to kind of respect that and give cyclists a little bit of space.